Neighborhood disputes. I am here today with Patrick McQueen, real estate extraordinaire, real estate attorney extraordinaire. Let me say it that way. Patrick, thank you so much. I always value your insight. And today we're going to talk a little bit about neighbor disputes. Is that a real thing? I'm sure you never see that coming across your desk.
It is a very real thing. It's usually a very unfortunate thing.
Oh.
It is so prevalent that I actually wrote a book about it about 3 or 4 years ago, about stories and what to avoid and how these things can develop into nastier stuff. The book was called Nasty Neighbors, and I should have thought about the title before I came up with that title. So don't Google it. Look it up on Amazon. But I have a bunch of stories about people who have gotten themselves into legal trouble. And I think it's because things are just a little more emotionally charged when it's right next door to you. It's your house, and you see your neighbor as somebody who is trying to invade your space or trying to do something that is, keeps you up at night or whatever. And so I've seen some stories. I mean, I've seen people who have dumped bags of concrete mix into people's pools. I've heard of, guns being drawn, fist fights, all sorts of this stuff. I've seen people's houses get bulldozed by an angry neighbor. And that's all in the book. But yeah, so it's quite ugly in terms of what we see.
So let's walk it through. Let's give some examples of maybe a situation and then what somebody can do to handle whatever it is that's happening. Let's just kind of spitball here. So give me like the top 1 or 2 types of situations you see where it starts to escalate.
Yeah. There's probably 2 types of legal disputes among neighbors that we see the most. Now, we see HOA disputes, and those sometimes are, disputes among neighbors as well. But what I'm talking about are direct neighbors. And so let's say that I've got this tree that's getting big and beautiful, and it provides me with some privacy, but it's hanging over your fence or hanging over the property line, and it's dropping saplings, and it's, hitting your car with these saplings or your boat or whatever you have, or it's just making your pavers really sticky and gross. What can you do in that situation? I've got this tree, and the subterranean, the underground roots are pushing up against the block wall, and it's ruining my block wall. Or, hey, I just laid these pavers down, and I put it on your property, and does me continuing to use those pavers create some sort of adverse possession claim that I now own a portion of your property? And so we see these title kind of issues or boundary issues. That's one sort of category, and it covers adverse possession, prescriptive easement, trimming of trees, the negligence in that. And then we see nuisance claims. So a nuisance claim, there's criminal nuisance, like you're really causing you've gone to the level of creating a crime because of your nuisance. But there's also civil nuisance, and a civil nuisance is like, hey, look, you're partying too loud, your marijuana smoke is coming into my yard, you're causing something that is unreasonable. You're treating the short-term rental guests are rowdy, whatever, you're parking in front of my, those types of things. So really they come in these title issues, like I said, or boundary issues, title or boundary, or in a nuisance type of claim. Those are the 2 primary ones that we see.
All right, so we have that situation. We have a neighbor, let's say, that is partying like crazy, like rock stars, and I go to bed at 8:30 and it's just not working. What do you recommend that we do other than sell the house? Let's say that's not our first option.
Yeah, I mean, if you've tried to talk to them, I mean, I think that's the first thing, is say, look, we live 2 different lifestyles. And can you try to keep it down? I've got earplugs in. I've had to go through these things, and in some instances, people just don't know that what they're doing. They're sort of oblivious to it. They don't realize, oh yeah, this stuff is bothering them. The smoke is drifting over there, or they can feel the music while they're trying to lay in bed, or whatever it is. Sometimes they just don't know. Or their dog is barking and they don't think it's a big deal because it's their dog and that sort of stuff. It's having the conversation. Hey, can we create some, different hours, or whatever? Can you do this? Hold this off to the weekends, or those types of things. And then if the conversation doesn't go anywhere, then you probably need to start taking some videos, maybe of the partying, just to see if it's shows up on a video. Sometimes it's not you're not gonna be able to get the audio, you're not gonna get the visual, but I would start sort of documenting this if you have to, again, if the conversations don't go well. And then it's sending some sort of official written correspondence, which to some people, if they're partying and they don't really care, then they're probably going to throw that away. But what you have to show is if my partying is becoming a nuisance to you, is that it is subjectively a nuisance. It subjectively bothers me. I now have to take sleeping pills. I can't sleep without super loud noises that sort of, or pillows over my head, or I had to see a psychiatrist to whatever. So it's subjectively bothering me. I have to show evidence that it's bothersome. And what I also have to show is that a reasonable person, an objective standard, a reasonable person would be annoyed by this situation. So there's a subjective aspect, which you'll easily be able to prove. Hey, I got bags under my eyes because I can't sleep, whatever it is. And then the objective is, that's why you're getting the videos. That's why you're kind of taking down, you're talking to other neighbors. So you have to prove both of those things. You send a letter, doesn't go anywhere. Then you're kind of left with, and by the way, in that book, there's samples of these letters, right? There's sort of these nicer letters. Hey, can we try talking to you, and maybe this will work a little bit better. But then it becomes, you're gonna have to file a lawsuit, and that's the unfortunate part, because that's when that ratchets it up a notch, and that's the scary part for a lot of people, and that's where it gets really, really emotional
and costly,
yeah. Especially if you hire me.
I know. Hey, so what about this? Let's say that somebody's just had it and they decide, I'm just going to move, put their house on the market, and they have an offer that they accept. Do they have to disclose the nuisance as part of the disclosure law?
Probably. Yeah, I think they probably do. And the reason I think they do is, yes, it's probably required by state law, but there's probably a good amount of evidence out there that you knew about this situation. Other neighbors are going to say, well, I talked to Patrick about this before he sold, and he was really angry about this partying, because the new buyer is going to probably experience something similar. Or Patrick went so far as to filing a police report to see if the police could provide some support here. And that's evidence of an issue that you knew about. And so the answer to me is, yeah, I really think you should in a situation like that. I mean, any of these neighbor disputes, if there's a title issue, if you've been using a portion of my property and you know it, and you've got to disclose that too. I mean, there's all sorts of categories on the seller property disclosure statement, and I think you have to disclose all of these issues.
Well, I had no idea you wrote a nasty neighbor book, but I'm sure it's on Amazon, and we will not be Googling nasty neighbors. We're just going to go nasty neighbor book on Amazon if you're interested in some of these letters, or getting a little more insight into maybe how to work through one of these scenarios.
Well, I will tell you this too. I will give you a copy, or anybody else who wants a copy. The reason I am doing that is because my mom bought about 50 copies because she wanted it to look like it was being purchased, and she was so proud of her son, etc. So she bought about 50 copies. I still have a bunch left that I never gave away. So if anybody wants one, feel free to email me. It is actually a good book. I mean, there's a lot of law in there. We go through the history of where some of these laws came from. So this one fascinates me for whatever reason. The law of adverse possession, which basically says I can take a portion of your property if I continue to use it for a period of 10 years, right? That happens a lot here in Arizona. And I'm like, why do we have this? Where did it come from? Why, what? And, a lot of our laws come from England and, common law there and William the Conqueror and all this stuff, all this nerdy history stuff. But it actually came from Roman agricultural law that basically said, if I leave my plants and I don't tend to them and I don't do anything with them, I don't improve the value of my property by cultivating these plants and cutting my whatever plants to make something with, and somebody else comes along and actually utilizes the property. We want to promote the utilization of real estate. We want to promote the utilization of real property. If they do it for enough time, it now becomes theirs. And so it's sort of this concept of 9/10 possession, or possession is 9/10 of the law, or whatever. That's where it came from. And it's like, so it's, super historic, law that we got. And I never knew that. I never knew that.
So interesting. Well, sign me up. Yes, I'll take one of those. And I love the fact that you're just so giving, not only with your time, but just with your brain. And there's so much that goes into real estate law and just situations that come up that you and your team is so helpful to kind of give guidance and for hire, certainly if things are needed. But I appreciate you. Thank you so much for taking time today, Patrick.
Yeah, my pleasure. Anytime. That's fun. So let's do it.
Talk soon. Bye.